the honor of introducing our speaker today. And it's always an honor to be on the podium with him. Our speaker today is Stanley Edward Maszczak, and he is a multi-passionate creator and holder of space. He's going to explain to us what that means. He's a performer at heart. He often serves as a speaker, trainer, writer, and coach. His values of inclusion, equity, dignity, and freedom inform his ongoing exploration of metaphysical principles and creative expression. His work has been greatly impacted by his long journey out of self-destructive experiences in fundamentalist religion, acceptance of his gay and gender nonconforming identity, and by his military service. Stanley recently retired back in December from the U.S. military after 21 plus years in the Army Reserve, where they had multiple stateside mobilizations, overseas and combat zone tours beginning on 9/11 and completing in 2022. In his newfound retirement, Stanley is focused on writing, speaking, coaching, and most recently consulting as a quantum human design specialist, while also serving as our president of the board of directors for Chapel here. He's done a wonderful job, by the way. He brings all of the experiences from his profession, everything, and he shares it with us. And something, I'd like to share something else, with something that I recently found out about Stanley is that he is an ordained metaphysical practitioner. And this is through the International Metaphysical Ministry. So, help us welcome our speaker today, Stanley, I almost said it, Stanley Edward Maszczak. Welcome, Stanley.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate that. Fix this a little bit. I'm a little taller.
Just a little bit.
A little bit. Heels give you a couple inches there too. All right, cool. Doing good? All right. Oh, look at those smiling faces. I love it. Okay, sorry, I had to look at the Zoom screen for a second. Okay. Good to see everybody. Wonderful to be here. As always, I love being here, being in person, being in the space, and being on Zoom. I mean, I feel like y'all probably share the experience of there just being really great energy here
Yes.
in the building. I mean, even on Zoom, it's just like, it just flows in. It's wonderful. So I'm really grateful for this community. The last couple of times I've spoken, I've talked about some of the chapel's guiding documents that I've been kind of unpacking on my own this year and thinking about in different ways. And so I talked about our purpose, our principles, our expression the last few times. And just a quick review, our purpose is to provide a place to worship God within our own beings, free from dogma or the controlling influences of any one specific religion. This means the open acceptance of everyone in every religion, understanding that we all worship the same God within and without. Furthermore, the purpose of the chapel is to share the love and light in ourselves and others so that we are open and receptive to the flow of God's light and love. I talked about our principles, which we read earlier in the service today. I talked about our expression last time, really focused on raising up light bearers, the edification of the light of God in each person, and how we can consciously choose to acknowledge the existence of God, source, love, all that is, and live our lives from that point of universal Christ consciousness outward. And I love all the different ways that we live this out here, that, you know, you see different speakers in the podium every week, you see different presiders, different people doing all the different things in the chapel. There's really a focus on community and bringing in different perspectives, knowing that we may all, you know, squabble over details in the end, but we're here unified by these really powerful principles and how we approach things and live from the space of love and light, and bringing that into our communities that need it. So today, as part of the lecture, I want to read the chapel's brief statement of philosophy with you. And it's also hanging up on the wall outside as you walk into the chapel. And then I'm going to unpack a couple of pieces of it, and then I'll close out with a personal story of how some of this impacts me. The chapel's philosophy says, we believe that all people have the ability to perceive beyond the physical. Those of us who are more developed are able to help others in their growth through the process of reading. We believe in the philosophy of the 7 universal laws as first described by Hermes the Alchemist and described today in the book called The Kybalion. We believe that if a person receiving a reading is uncomfortable with the information they receive, they're able to change the projected outcome by changing the path they're on. We believe there is no predestination. Fate is never sealed. Fate is never sealed. It's powerful, right? Like we have all these gifts that we share with each other, but nothing is ever prescriptive. We're not telling each other what to do. Part of us is we don't try to change anybody or direct their paths. A big part of who we are is that each person is responsible for their own growth, decisions, and progression, which is very different from where I grew up. But we won't talk about that today. So I want to break down a couple of these pieces of philosophy here. We believe in the philosophy of the 7 universal laws as first described by Hermes the Alchemist and described today in the book, The Kybalion. Reverend Jenny Seeley taught a really great overview class of the Kybalion a few weeks ago, the end of last month here in the chapel. It was really great. I was here for it. She used these cool keys that she handed out. It was very good. It was very good. So if she does that again, I definitely recommend you checking that out. If you haven't read the Kybalion, it's a great book to use as a kind of a jumping off point for understanding some of the universal laws that we really talk about and unpack here. And also, like any other book written by human beings, it can have some flaws too, right? And I bring that up because sometimes the way that I was brought up was in a way that idolized, what I understood as idolizing the Bible, idolizing the King James Version and saying, this is from God's lips to man's pen, this is it, right? And historically, I understand that's not quite how things are. Right. So anytime that people get involved with writing something down, they're going to be doing it through their lenses and stuff too, right? So that's why we bring our own wisdom to the ways that we look at things and understand wisdom and apply it to our lives. And we ask these powerful questions that help us unpack it for us, and to play with it and experiment with it and see what it does in our lives as we apply it and how it impacts us and other people. Are the results from that process good and positive and supportive for me, or are they not? And if not, maybe this isn't for me, right? It doesn't mean it's bad for everybody across all humanity and all time and space, but maybe it's not for me right now. That's part of the importance of our own individualized responsibility for our lives that we have today, right? So there's no myth of perfection or infallibility with the Kybalion or the Bible or any of these other books as we come to approach it from my perspective. But one of the things that's evident when you look at our chapel's guiding documents is that idea and energy of just openness and expansiveness and inclusion, really wanting to learn more about our metaphysical history and our mystical history and all the different religious traditions who had powerful mystics throughout all the ages and bring all this wisdom forward. And we've seen how, science eventually sometimes confirms what the mystics knew for a long time, right? I think Nolan's talked about that a couple of times too, bringing that powerful, like 3D, third dimensional impact into the spiritual understanding. But we have this beautiful lineage to tap into of mysticism and metaphysics. See, I like how I write things down like I'm just going to read it and I'm not. And then I'm like, where am I? So one of those laws that we'll talk about real quick is an example of that is the law of correspondence. So in the Kybalion, it talks about the law of correspondence, which is kind of translated as above, so below, as below, so above. Anybody heard that before?
Yes.
Yeah, heard it in the Bible, I think, too, and some other places. Like it's not limited to here. This wisdom is transcendent. So what does this mean for me? If I think about the law of correspondence, as above, so below, I can ask some questions. Is my inner life a mirror of my outer life right now? Or is my outer life mirroring what's going on inside of me? And how is it? And if I don't feel like it is, why is it not? Or how is it not? And is my physical reality, all my experiences around me, do I feel like that's mirroring the non-physical and the unseen? How so or how not? These are some great questions to think about and experiment with, right? And if part of the reason I feel like it's not is because there's a lot of stuff going on out there that's not really high vibrational and not supportive for all people, how am I going to bring what's within me, what I know my connection to the universe is, out into my physical reality to manifest below what I know is above, to manifest outside me what I know is inside, okay? Because part of this too is, as our philosophy states, we believe that all people have the ability to perceive beyond the physical. It's not just a couple of people. It's not just, the special people who come up here and do messages and psychic readings and all this stuff, right? These are folks who have developed that ability over time, but all of us have that. And it's just a matter of developing a specific skill set, right? None of this is moral, good or bad, or better or worse. It's about developing skills. So if we all have that ability, how am I uniquely tapping into my connection with Source to receive what's meant for me so that I can bring that love and light into the world around me? So I can bring that powerful, positive transformation that's always for the greatest good of all and harm to none into the world around me. And with this too, I also know personally that that doesn't look the same for everybody. Even when we look at message bearers up here, they're very different depending on who's giving the message, right? Are they more visual? Are they more auditory? Is it words? Is it phrases? What is it? It's all different. We see people who read at the psychic fair. Are they using tarot? Are they using runes? Are they just channeling messages? What are they doing? How are they getting that? Because we're all wired differently. And I don't think we've even humanity-wise tapped into all the different ways that can look. But we have this opportunity to connect in and do that. And just trust that it's there and that it doesn't have to look like anybody else. There's so much diversity in how we perceive that. We have, all the clairs we talk about, the clairvoyance, the clear seeing, the clear olfactance, the clear smelling. One of the teachers that I'm studying with right now, she says that her daughter has clear olfactance, clear smelling, and she can smell when a person's pregnant before they know they're pregnant. I'm like, what? I didn't even know that was a thing, right? But that's the space we're trying to create here. Is we don't even have to know that things are things. Like, just figure it out what's happening and work through it. Allow it to play its course, right? Is what I'm doing supportive for the people around me? Then go with it. Don't care what people are saying. You got to find your own gifts and how that plays out, right? So think about all the different modalities and teachings and ways that we have to do that. I mentioned those earlier, the tarot, the runes, all of these things. Just think of how much more might be ready and willing to come through if only we're tapping into our unique wisdom and how we can bring that forward into the world. That's why so much of my life has been about creating more expansive space for people, for individuals, for communities. Educating myself to learn about people who are different from me, helping educate others, helping all of us see more of who we are as human beings, more of those spectrums of our existence, that there's always infinitely more space and expansiveness and room for all of us, for all the places we come from, for all the different parts of us, for all the ways that we look and dress and talk and whatever part of the country or the world we came from. And if we can consciously create more space, really, really, really acknowledge the expansive space that's already there and allow more people to see those different people who look differently, allow them to be elevated and be seen as much as all the other people are seen. We can all collectively have those examples and it won't be so hard for us if we feel like we have to be the one to create space, right? So create the space now, allow it to build, allow people to see it and step into it so we can create it together, right? So for all the ways we can acknowledge and create the perfection of this moment, we can also acknowledge that there's systems and structures in our society as it stands right now don't necessarily reflect that expansiveness, right? Or that inclusion. That's another reason we're here in this time right now on this planet, to bring that forward and allow the below to mirror the above. How are we shifting the systems and society around us to be more expansive and inclusive of all the people on this planet? Right? To allow ourselves the expansive space and vision to see and feel and hear, taste, touch, experience, know, and allow all the people around us to then have that space to do the same, to have that equitable access to all the things that we all should have access to. So as we create this expansive vision and future in today's now, we're all being called forward to do it in these really sustainable ways that acknowledge that there's always plenty of space for all of us. Even if I'm taking up a whole lot of space because this is the space I was here to take up, that doesn't mean I'm taking up your space. There's always enough space for all of us when I'm taking up my space. I'm not here to take up your space or your space, because when I take up the space I'm here to take up, I am naturally creating that same space for you to step into all the space you are here to take up and fill. There's no conflict. There's no myth of conflict. There's no competition here. There's space. So how am I creating space for myself in a way that allows people to do the same around me? There's always enough for all of us. And when we realize that, a lot of our problems in the world that revolve around there not being enough will be solved. So another point of our philosophy says that those of us who are more developed and are able, there are those of us who are more developed and are able to help develop others. I'm reading that backwards. Those of us who are more developed are able to help others in their growth through the process of reading. Another part of our philosophy. So like I mentioned earlier, some of us are more developed in some areas than others. And again, that's just about skill building. There can be a feeling of, oh, you're more spiritual than I am. It has nothing to do with that. Nothing, not a single thing, because we all have different gifts and talents. And a lot of this is just about skill building. And what took me so long to step into mine, and I know I still have a lot of growth to experience too, was that I was trying to make mine look like other people's. Yeah. Said, oh, I'm supposed to see it like that. And that's, no, you're not. You're supposed to see it like you're supposed to see it, right? So when I stop comparing myself to other people, I create more space inside myself to see and experience what I need to experience. So we all have these abilities, and it's another reason I love the places like this chapel who create that space for others to come and learn and question and grow and practice and figure it out together. Last piece of our philosophy that I'll chat about, I think, is we believe that a person receiving a reading, if a person receiving a reading is uncomfortable with the information they receive, they're able to change the projected outcome by changing the path they're on. We believe there's no predestination and fate is never sealed. So why would a person be uncomfortable with a message they receive? There could be a lot of different reasons. Maybe what's going on around them that the person giving them the reading is tapping into is uncomfortable for them, or they don't want it. And the person giving them a reading sees that, so it might be uncomfortable. They can change that. Often our readers and message bearers are tapping into that energetic field and reflecting back to you what's there, what's present now, whatever's asking for your attention, for your love, for transmutation, for acknowledgement to help us move forward. Sometimes that can be uncomfortable. Maybe the words that the message bearer used have specific meaning for them that might be uncomfortable for the person sitting in the chair. And that's a language issue, right? Maybe they want to create something different from what's going on or what was laid out. Or maybe what appeared for the person, the message bearer, the reader, hasn't made its way into your experience yet. And so it's unfamiliar, but maybe it's gonna show up in the next few days or something. So maybe I just need to sit and wait with it, right? So there's all these ways to interpret it. Or maybe the message bearer, reader's filters got in the way of giving you as clear a message as they could have given you, right? So there's all these things at play. Sometimes when I try to set my ego aside, it doesn't go quietly. Right? Sometimes that happens because, again, we are all human beings. None of us are perfect, right? We're simultaneously perfect and not, right? We're great where we are, but also sometimes things happen and it comes in there differently. That's why it's so important that we all have our own value and worth, and we all have our own choice in how we receive or not receive things, interpret or let it go. We all have that ability. And when we kind of experience that, it creates more space, right? Space creates more space for us. I feel like I've said that word a lot. So again, each of us has that full agency, that freedom of choice, as above, so below. Always allowing this to be supportive for us and for the communities around us, for the greatest good of all and harm to none. So I'll leave you with a story. So several months ago, well, off and on for really a couple of years, but I've been studying a new modality, because there's so many modalities, right? A new modality called quantum human design. And it's something that integrates understanding from the Hindu chakra system, Western astrology, the Chinese I Ching, the Jewish Kabbalah, and quantum physics. And it really helps us understand how we're wired energetically to receive and translate energy from source and impulses, and how we are naturally wired to make decisions, and what creativity looks like for us, and what it looks like when we're aligned versus not aligned. It gives us verbiage and information to understand this. Because how many times have really well-meaning people stood in front of you or groups of people and said, this is the way you're supposed to do this, right? This is the way you're supposed to lead. This is the way you're supposed to do your planning and scheduling of your day. This is the way you're supposed to meditate. This is the way you're supposed to write. This is the way you're supposed to communicate with people around you. If you don't do this, you're wrong, right? It's all bull crap. Right? It is. Because there are ways that are supportive for us that are not supportive for other people. To me, that's leadership, is learning how to communicate effectively when knowing everybody's different, right? But this helps us understand that there's so many different ways we can do this. So for me, this is the story. When I was a kid, as a young adult, even as a young adult, I grew up in church. So we were taught, every day you should have quiet time. And quiet time means you read your Bible, you pray, you journal, whatever you need to do, just have that time with the Lord. So you sit and you pray and you do it. And it was a beautiful time, beautiful, wonderful time for me. But what would happen to me is sometimes I'd be in the middle of my quiet time. I'm really trying to connect with God, trying to be the spiritual person I'm supposed to be. And somebody would walk in, like my mom, my dad, my brother, somebody would walk in and interrupt me. And what would happen inside of me is I get upset. I get angry. Like, I'm in my time with God. Why are you interrupting? But then I would think about it and say, but I'm praying. I shouldn't be angry right now. If I'm really connecting with God, then I would be okay with it. Like, it's fine. It's just an interruption. I'll get back to it. Okay. But later in life, as I started connecting with meditation and starting that practice, like similar things would happen. I'd be in the middle of meditation. Somebody would walk in and I'd be like, I know. Yeah. Start that clock over 15 minutes back at the beginning. Right. But it was this anger and this frustration. But the same judgment would come in and I would say, but I'm connecting with spirit. Like, I shouldn't be angry. I was taught that anger is bad. It's not a good thing. And if I'm really connecting with God, then I should be feeling more elevated. And especially because even as a young kid, I knew I was gay. I knew I was different. And I knew the church said I couldn't be that way and I was going to go to hell because of it. So I had that in the back of my mind thinking, maybe that's why I get angry, because I'm not really a good person, because God doesn't love me. Maybe those are the things happening, right? So if I was really a Christian or really a spiritual person, I wouldn't get angry. But what I've learned when I started studying quantum human design is that anger for me is a message. And it's a message because the way that I'm wired sets me up to understand that part of how I receive information and connect with spirit is through an internal nonverbal creative flow. And when that flow is interrupted, it can produce anger because I'm in that flow and I'm getting interrupted. And that's just a natural part of the way I'm wired. And not everybody's wired that way. It's about a third of us. But the other piece of it is it comes with a strategy. The strategy to help with that is just tell people what you're doing so they don't interrupt you. It sounds super simple, but when I'm also coupled with this fear of not wanting to get permission from other people, I want to do my own thing. I don't want to be held down. Like, telling people in advance what I'm doing can feel hard. So as I start practicing this and telling people what I'm doing, so I have that space and that protection, it's a totally different experience. And I just realized there's so many different ways that we're wired, so many different types and strategies and ways that we can move the world effectively that go against what we've been socialized to understand, that might be really perfect for us in this now moment, if we can allow ourselves to open up and receive it. And there's so many modalities that help us with that, right? That's why it's about opening up to find out what supports us uniquely as individuals, and then sharing from that space, whatever the gifts are we're here to share. So there's enough space for each of us to be as big as we're meant to be and to support others to do the same. There's enough room for us to say what we need to say and share what we need to share, while we're also creating that same space of invitation for the people around us. And our paths are all uniquely unfolding. And I know that I can honor that in a way that creates more inclusive space for others, while allowing my soul to flourish in all the ways it's meant to, in each breath, in each moment, in each and every day of my life, especially when I remember that I can do that and do it consciously. I'll leave that with you.